When you carry a badge long enough, the city starts talking to you in little ways. The way a street goes quiet a second before a fight. The way a hallway smells like bleach when someone's trying to rinse guilt down a drain. And sometimes it whispers in your ear with a face you thought you'd buried. It was a Tuesday, the kind that makes coffee taste like cardboard. I was 3 hours into paperwork on a string of smash and grabs when CSU buzzed me to the video lab. "You're going to want to see this, detective," Danny said, voice too careful. On the screen, a white noise hiss of Alleycam, timestamp 22:14 the night before. A man stepped into frame, late 30s, good suit gone soft at the elbows, cuff flashing as he checked his phone. The camera was trash, but I didn't need 4K to recognize what caught the light. A stainless case, beveled, with a bruise-colored burn in the loom at 11 o'clock and a half-moon scar on the acrylic crystal. A battered 1972 Seamaster that kept worse time than a broken promise. My father's watch. I know it was his because I broke it. Summer of '98, I'd slammed a screen door on his wrist and he laughed as the crystal spidered. "He never fixed it," said. "A scar gave you character." When he died, I asked the funeral home to leave the watch on him. "A man should keep his time," I told the director. We sealed the coffin. Dirt doesn't give receipts. The video jittered forward. The suited man, unknown, unsteady, leaned into the mouth of the alley like he'd heard someone call his name. He lifted the same wrist to wave. The watch winked again under the sodium lamp. Another figure, hood up, met him halfway. No faces. A trade. A question. The hooded figure stepped close, too close, and the suited man flinched. Then the feed jumped frames and they were gone, just wet pavement and a trash can rolling lazy in the wind. "Pulled from a deli's back camera on Hoover," Danny said. "We only got this angle. 2 blocks down there's a dead zone." "What's the case?" I asked, even though I could feel it in the air. "Victim turned up at 5:40, we think same guy. CSU's still processing. Uniforms waited because the bodies, well, you'll see." I stared at the freeze frame. The watch. The engraving under the caseback read "Always on time, JV." The J and the V were my father. No mistaking that. "Run facial on the suit," I said. "And pull funeral home logs from St. Marlo's for 2009. Danny blinked. "Why the hell?" "Because that watch was supposed to be underground," I said. "Text me the alley address." Hoover runs like a seam through neighborhoods that pretend not to touch. By the time I got there, the coroner's van was idling and 2 uniforms were keeping looky-loose back with bored hands. A chalky sun was flattening everything. The smell hit first: copper, vinegar, city morning. The body was tucked behind pallets at the loading dock of a furniture warehouse like someone had tried to hide him and lost interest. He was on his side. Gray suit darker at the ribs with bleed-through, white shirt shocked red then brown. Late 30s, just like the video. Dark hair clean at the neck, a barber who still tried. Hands soft, nails neat. No wallet I could see. I crouched and felt the air on my neck go still. The left wrist was bare. There was a pale ring of skin where a watch had been, sharp enough to be yesterday. A tiny crescent of irritation on the tendon where a metal crown had rubbed for years. The spring bars had scuffed him. I knew that itch. But no watch. Not his. Not mine. I heard my pulse in my ears. "Victim ID?" I asked the CSU tech kneeling near the shoes. "No hard ID yet," she said. "Phone's missing. We found a driver's license near the dumpster. Might be his. Name reads Caleb Reed. Wallet's light. No cash." The name meant nothing. The watch meant everything. I forced my eyes away and took inventory. No defensive wounds on the hands, no broken nails, no fresh knuckle splits. A thin plastic glitter in a cut on his cheek, micro shards from a taillight, maybe. Scuff lines on the soles. He'd run recently, the rubber looked fresh abraded. The angle of the body told a mean story. He hadn't dropped where he was hit. He'd been moved or herded. The blood pooled under him, dark and thick, an oval with a tail. He'd slid a foot or 2. The wound was low and right, below the ribs. Knife, left-handed thrust or a right-handed reverse. Or someone knew exactly where to stick a man so he'd bleed quiet. Where's the initial contact? I asked. Drag marks from the alley mouth, CSU said, pointing. 2 sets of prints, victim's loafers and something with a finer tread. Maybe a woman, maybe a smaller man. Any witnesses? Neighbors heard a car around 3. Some yelling, not English. That's all we got. I walked the path back to the alley and the city whispered again. Trash bags burst sugar ants. A single cufflink glinted near the grate, cheap gold with a hairline crack. I bagged it. 10 feet on, a smear of blood on a corrugated door at thigh height. He'd pressed a hand there to stand or keep his feet. I pressed my own hand close, not touching, to feel the geometry of it. A smear is a sentence in the wrong language, but you can learn to read cadence. Detective. One of the uniforms approached, a kid who still ironed his sleeves hard. We've got a woman across the street swears she saw the victim last night. Says he bought her a cigarette and asked for a light. What time? Little after 10. She says he kept checking his watch like he was waiting on someone. Of course he did. Get me her statement, I said. And tell Danny to pull traffic cams eastbound from Hoover between 10 and 3. I walked back to the body. Sorry, Caleb, I said, soft, whether or not that was his name. I need to know why you were wearing my father's wrist. The coroner gave me the look my ex used to give me when I lost time in my own head. You'll want to see this, she said, peeling back fabric with tweezers. There was a narrow slice under the right armpit, clean, surgical. Not the fatal, but deliberate. A search, maybe. Someone had checked where a man hides a spare phone or a thin knife. Professional or paranoid. Anything under the nails? I asked. Flex. Metallic. We'll run it. Metal. Gold. Steel. My chest ached with a stupid hope that some sliver of my father's life had fought back from the grave and left a mark on the man who wore it. My phone buzzed. Danny. Got a name. Facial hit matches a chartered accountant, 38. No priors. Employer. Vanguard Ethics Consulting. Also, check your email. I pulled funeral home docs. Your dad's coffin was closed by family request. Records say, personal effects returned to next of kin. I stared at the message so long the letters started to float. Next of kin was me. I never got the watch back. I signed papers while my mother cried and the director patted my arm and said all the right sad words. Return to next of kin means either they're lying now, or they lied then, or someone signed my name and walked out with my father's time. The city wasn't whispering anymore. It was clearing its throat. I zipped the body bag myself because sometimes you have to put a lid on your ghosts with your own hands. As the zipper hummed, a black sedan eased up to the tape and killed the engine. Out stepped a man whose suit fit too well to be local government and not well enough to be FBI. He had the air of someone who believes rooms belong to him when he enters. Detective Vale, he asked, offering a smile that didn't bother his eyes. I'm Adrian Knox. Vanguard Ethics. Caleb was one of ours. How fast? I said. We monitor staff duty phones, he said smoothly. His went dark at 3:12. We're concerned. He looked past me to the bag. The concern didn't reach his jaw. You can be concerned after you answer questions, I said. Starting with who Caleb met last night and why he was wearing a dead man's watch. Knox didn't blink. A dead man's watch. That's a colorful way to put it. It's accurate. I held his eyes. What did Caleb do for you? Due diligence, mostly. Third-party risk assessments. We advise clients on compliance exposures, procurement, supply chain, funeral. He cut himself off a millimeter too late. Funeral. Healthcare portfolio includes hospice chains, he said, smoothing it over. Hospice engages death care vendors. It's all messy. Caleb was auditing a provider this quarter. Name. Halberd and Haven. He smiled like he just handed me a napkin. Regional. Owns 3 homes in the metro. St. Marlo's is owned by a holding group called Halberd and Haven Memorial. I didn't smile back. Why was Caleb in that alley? He didn't tell me, Knox said. But he told someone. He was careful. We're all trained to be. Careful people don't end up behind a warehouse at dawn. I looked at his shoes. Fine tread, Italian, narrow. I pictured the prints by the drag marks. Close. Detective, the coroner called. We're ready to transport. Knox stepped aside, gaze flicking to the black bag, then to me. When you're ready to speak more formally, our general counsel is eager to cooperate. Great, I said. Bring your shoes. He left a business card that felt like a gasket, heavy and oil-slicked. A dot embossed above his name. The kind of card designed to suggest doors you can't see. Back at the squad, Danny had split the alley footage into frames and scrubbed the static like he was polishing a coin. On one freeze, the suit's wrist caught a cleaner angle. If you knew where to look, you could nearly make out the spidered crystal. I knew where to look. Also got the witness, Danny said. Her statement's thin, but she remembers the guy trying to light a cigarette with a hotel matchbook. Said the cover had a gold crown on blue. The Meridian, I said. The private club off Piper, blue on blue with a gold crown logo and a cocktail menu that calls bourbon heritage corn. Thought so. And traffic cams picked a black sedan idling 2 blocks off Hoover at 2:59, shifting spots every 20 minutes, no plates on either side that read. Might be Knox. Might be anyone with money and paranoia. My desk phone rang before I could answer. Vale. Prelim on your metallic flex, the lab said. Mostly nickel and chromium. Stainless steel. Small curvature. Shapes consistent with a spring bar or caseback shaving. And we found micro-residue of acrylic in the same sample. Polymethyl methacrylate. Acrylic crystal, I said. Vintage watch crystal, he confirmed. There's also a smear of human skin cells from a different donor under the victim's middle fingernail. We'll run DNA. He'd clawed at the watch. Or at the wrist that wore it. Expedite, I said. I went to the Meridian at lunch because you go where the ghosts leave breadcrumbs. Clubs pretend not to know cops until you speak the language of liability. The bartender was a stork in a waistcoat who took pride in not remembering faces. Tuesday night? I asked, dropping a photo of Caleb's frame from the deli footage. After 10. You know we don't give. This is a murder, I said. He bought a cigarette. Matches, blue with a crown. Talk to me. He flicked a look at the manager, who pretended to be fascinated by an invoice. He was here, the bartender said. Sat at the rail, didn't drink much. Kept checking his watch. Met someone in a dark hoodie who didn't belong. How so? Cashmere hoodie in a room full of wool suits. Walked like they'd rather be near a wall. Didn't want anyone at their back. Pronoun? I asked. Small frame. Could be a woman. Hands looked careful. He wrinkled his nose, searching. They tipped like someone who counts change for a living. Undertaker, I said. He startled. That's the word I was looking for. I asked for receipts. Caleb had paid for a club soda at 2209 with a corporate card, Vanguard Ethics. The hood showed up on no tab and no cameras because the Meridian's cameras are antiques pointed at the wrong corners, by design. I still took the footage. On my way out, a woman in a gray dress brushed me and slipped a matchbook into my coat pocket like we were in a noir play. The cover was blue with a gold crown. Inside, a number had been scrawled in pencil, 14-23-14. Not a phone. A locker. Or a mortuary drawer. I hate when my brain helps the city do its tricks. St. Marlowe's wore grief like wallpaper. A gauze of lilies and polished wood. Director Breen had the kind of face that learned its expressions from mirrors. Detective Vale, he said, reading my card. A sorrow we meet under such circumstances. In 2009, my father was here, I said. Closed casket. Your records say, personal effects returned to next of kin. That wasn't true. He arranged his features into regret. I'm sure there's an explanation. There usually is, I said. I'd love to hear yours. He produced a binder with tabs as precise as surgery. Found the page. Copied forms live on these pages like algae. He slid one across the desk. You signed. I didn't sit. The signature was my name written by someone who learned penmanship from a blueprint. My own hand makes a lazy V. This V was a right angle. That's not me. Our policy at the time allowed for designated proxies to collect effects, he said. Sometimes families are too bereaved to. Who's the proxy? I asked. The line read, A. Knox. The K sat like a flag planted on a wrong hill. Adrian Knox. I said, flat. Breen blinked. The vendor representative. We use outside specialists for chain of custody on valuables. At the time, Halbert and Haven had a contract with Vanguard Ethics to audit our compliance. They provided a liaison. Mr. Knox was authorized for temporary custody to log and secure. To log and secure, I repeated. My mouth tasted like a battery. Where did my father's watch go after Mr. Knox logged and secured it? We transferred certain items to Transitus Reliquary, he said, relief at having a company name to hide behind. They handle Transitus, I said. Latin for crossing over. Cute. Estate liquidation to cover costs when families decline to redeem. I didn't decline, I said. I was lied to. And your proxy forged me. Breen folded his hands like a man praying in a commercial. Detective, I can only speak to records. If there was a mistake, we'll assist in any way. But you should know Mr. Knox is no longer with Vanguard. He spun off his own consultancy last year. He still appears as a vendor on certain legacy contracts. Meaning you still let him in the back door, I said. Do you have video for 2009? We archive for 7 years. He smiled, apologetic. Regretfully, that era is gone. I stared past him down the corridor where a door to Prep was propped with a weighted booklet. The booklet's cover had a blue crown, gold embossed. Somebody likes the Meridian, I said. Our night manager likes to feel exclusive, he said, and his smile faltered. Show me your safe, I said. And your sign-in logs for vendors. And any transfer sheets to Transitus Reliquary for the last 12 months. He hesitated just long enough to tell me I was pointing in the right direction. He made calls. While we waited, I wandered the viewing rooms. The carpet muted the city into a hush that made my skin itch. Grief was staged here. Soft chairs, neutral lamps, disposable water at the right hand. In room C, someone had left a Bible open to Ecclesiastes as if time behaves better when preached at. The safe was cleaner than my kitchen. The vendor log was messy where it mattered. Transitus signatures looked like a doctor's shrug, illegible loops, always the same pressure. The initials at the bottom of half the pages were AK. On a sheet dated 3 nights ago, the night Caleb died, there was a late entry, 2341, special pickup, authorizing manager. Breen, received by A. Knox. Breen swallowed. We had a family in distress. There were items that required. Required what? I said. A consultant in a cashmere hoodie? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I copied the page, and when he opened his mouth to protest, I let him see something true on my face. He closed it again. On my way out, I passed a woman in scrubs rolling a gurney. She looked up, eyes flat with the exhaustion of people who work where days don't end. Her shoes had a fine tread, not a match but close. Long night? I asked. They're all long, she said. Outside, I called Knox. We need to talk about my father, I said when he picked up. And about a vendor you authorized to steal time from the dead. He exhaled through his nose. Detective, let's not be theatrical. Come to the third, I said. Bring your general counsel, and wear a recorder if it makes you feel safe. Or we do it my way. I prefer neutral ground. So do I said. I like the food at the Meridian. Silence, then. 20 minutes. I slipped the matchbook from my pocket. 14-23-14. Meridian's private lockers are 3 digits, not 5. But the morgue drawers at County are labeled by room, bay, tray. 14-23. 14 would read like a map if you were someone who tried not to leave footprints but couldn't resist cleverness. I called the lab again. When that DNA pops, you call me first, I said. Got a feeling, he asked. Yeah, I said, watching the street. That the city told me a joke and I didn't get the punchline yet. And that Adrian Knox thinks he's writing it. The Meridian at lunch is quiet, just polished brass and the low hum of people pretending their problems don't follow them indoors. By the time I walked in, Knox was already seated in a corner booth, the kind of seat that gives you a view of both doors. His tie was undone by a precise half-inch, like rebellion signed off by a committee. A woman in a charcoal suit sat beside him, his general counsel, I guessed. Her expression was granite with lipstick. Detective Vale, Knox said, voice silk stretched too thin. You've been busy. Not as busy as you, apparently, I said, sliding into the booth opposite. You've been forging signatures, lifting property off corpses, and moonlighting as a pickup man in alleys. His smile didn't move. Careful, detective. Allegations are heavy things. They can fall back on you if you hold them wrong. The counsel raised a manicured hand. Anything said here is off the record. My client is cooperating in good faith. Good faith doesn't bleed behind warehouses, I said. Caleb Reed. One of yours. He died after meeting you, or someone you sent. He was wearing my father's watch when he went down. I've got lab traces of acrylic and steel under his nails. He clawed at it. Knox's gaze flickered for a fraction, then steadied. Caleb was misled. He thought he'd uncovered something significant. A pattern in transfer records. But what he stumbled into wasn't theft. It was stewardship. Stewardship. I repeated. That what you call robbing the dead? We call it preserving history. Timepieces, jewelry, heirlooms, families throw them away. They bury them to rot. We intercept. We catalog. We place them where they can continue to mean something. I leaned forward. You intercepted my father's Seamaster. You forged my name to justify it. You let some accountant walk the city with it strapped to his wrist. And now he's in a bag. That what you call preservation? The lawyer cut in, crisp. Detective, I suggest you refrain from making accusations you cannot substantiate in court. If you wish to open a formal inquiry, we will cooperate through appropriate channels. Otherwise, this meeting is unproductive. Unproductive's fine, I said. I came to watch him sweat. But Knox wasn't sweating. His eyes had that look I've seen in gamblers who know the dealer's bent. Caleb made a copy, he said softly. Ledger pages. He took them from our secure archive. That's why he died. Not because of a watch. Because he walked into traffic carrying proof. What ledger? I asked. Transfers. Every item catalogued since 2007. Names, dates, destinations. Including your father's. Including others you'd recognize. The lawyer's hand twitched, a signal. Knox ignored it. He meant to sell it. To you, maybe. To someone louder. But he didn't make it. Someone else took him down. Who? I asked. Detective, Knox said, voice low. This city has rooms you've never walked into. Rooms where death is inventory and grief is just a margin cost. Caleb wandered too close. I tried to warn him. He thought he was immune because he carried my card. You're telling me you didn't kill him, I said. I'm telling you I had no reason to. If Caleb wanted to expose us, he'd have come to you alive. His death serves someone else. The lawyer pushed a folder across the table. Non-disclosure, she said. If you want the ledger, sign it. Otherwise, this conversation ends. I didn't touch it. I don't sign paper I can't read backward in the mirror. Her jaw tightened. Knox shrugged. Then you'll keep chasing shadows. But remember this, if you dig too deep, you won't just find your father's watch. You'll find why he had it in the first place. I stood. You're not the first man to tell me ghosts are dangerous. They don't scare me. On the street, the city air smelled like rust and gasoline. My phone buzzed. Danny again. Got your DNA match, he said. The skin under Caleb's nail? Female. No priors, but we cross-referenced occupational markers. Strong hit on formaldehyde traces. Works in prep. Funeral home staff, I said. Which home? St. Marlowe's. Tech named Lila Harmon. 28. On payroll 5 years. Lives 3 blocks from the warehouse where Caleb bled out. I remembered the woman in scrubs rolling a gurney, eyes flat with fatigue. Shoes with fine tread. Pull her last shifts. And get me her address. By dusk, I was parked across from a tired brick apartment block where the paint peeled in strips like old wallpaper. Harmon's window was lit. Shadow moved across the blinds, steady, deliberate. A person who didn't flinch from routine. I buzzed the intercom. No answer. I waited. At 2010 she came down, hoodie pulled, bag slung crossbody. Her stride was precise, as if she was counting each step. I followed at a distance. She didn't look back once, but her pace adjusted subtly with every block, matching the rhythm of the street. She knew she was being watched, or she always walked like someone might. She turned into a side street lined with shuttered shops. I quickened, then slowed when she stopped under a flickering lamp. She turned. Her face was pale in the glow, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. "Detective Vale," she said. "You know me," I said. "You came to St. Marlowe's. You asked about long nights." Her tone was flat, but her gaze cut. "Now you're here. Means you found me." "You were with Caleb," I said. "At the Meridian. At the alley. His DNA's under your nails." Her lips pressed thin. "He wanted to show me something. He thought he could trust me because I work with the bodies, because I see what gets stolen. He was wrong." "You killed him." "No," a quick shake of her head. "I pulled him into the alley after he was hit. Tried to keep him upright. He grabbed my wrist, clawed. He was already bleeding out. I couldn't stop it." "Then who stuck him?" She looked past me, scanning rooftops like she expected the city itself to sprout teeth. "Knox has collectors. Not men in suits. People who live between records. They don't like loose pages. Caleb was a loose page." "Where's the ledger?" I asked. Her hand tightened on the bag. "Safe. For now. But if you want it, you'll have to trade me something. Protection. Because the next body they prep will be mine." The lamp hummed above us, sputtering in yellow arcs. I saw the sweat on her temple, not from fear but from the weight of knowing how thin the margin was. Somewhere close, a car idled too long, engine ticking. My father's Seamaster kept time in the dark, wherever it was, second hand twitching like a pulse. "You'll give me the ledger," I said, "and I'll make sure you don't end up on a gurney in your own prep room." She held my gaze. Then she nodded once. "Tomorrow. County Morgue. Drawer 142314. The numbers from the matchbook. The city's whisper finally had words. County Morgue at night is a place that eats sound. The hum of the refrigeration units is steady, almost soothing, until you remember what they're soothing. I signed myself in under the pretense of reviewing chain of custody on Caleb's body. The attendant gave me a side eye but didn't ask questions. Badge weight buys silence. Drawer 142314 was in the deepest row, metal face cold enough to frost the edges of my glove. I slid it open and braced for the weight of a body. Instead there was a folder wrapped in butcher paper, edges darkened with some chemical stain. The tag clipped to the paper said, "Unclaimed." Inside, pages torn from bound ledgers, copied in tight handwriting. Every line neat, date spanning back more than a decade. Columns for deceased, effects, proxy signatures, destinations. And in the far right column, cryptic codes, numbers and letters I recognized as auction identifiers. Some names leapt out like ghosts. Watches, medals, rings. A boy's locket from a car crash in 2011. A silver cross from a priest buried in 16. And August 3, 2009, J. Vale, Omega Seamaster, scarred crystal. Destination, TRI 104. I felt my chest tighten until the folder blurred. My father's watch had been logged like cargo, stamped with a code. Transitus Reliquary Inventory. Drawer 104. "You shouldn't have opened that yet," a voice said behind me. I turned. Lila Harmon stood in the doorway, hoodie half-zipped, eyes sharp despite her pallor. Her bag hung loose at her side. You set this up, I said. I promised you the ledger. That's it. But if you read it here, you'll have company sooner than you want. Knox watches his numbers like blood pressure. You pulled these pages, I said. She nodded once. I handle intake. I see what goes missing. I copied the worst of it. Caleb thought we could use it to bring them down. Thought. They don't leave loose ends. You know that now. I slid the folder back into the butcher paper, tucked it under my coat. So why are you still breathing? Her eyes flicked away. Maybe I'm not important enough yet. Maybe they think I don't know how to use what I copied. Maybe they're waiting to see who I trust with it. The morgue lights buzzed once, then steadied. I heard a door clank 2 corridors over. Too heavy for staff. Too deliberate. They followed you, she said. We moved fast, cutting through the prep corridor into the autopsy bay. The smell of disinfectant clung thick. I killed the lights and pulled her against the wall just as footsteps echoed in. 2 men, shapes against the faint glow from the exit sign. One carried something long wrapped in cloth. Not tools you buy in a hardware store, tools you inherit in quiet handshakes. They won't talk, Lila whispered. I don't need them to. I slipped my sidearm loose and let the metal steady me. The men split, one angling down the row of drawers, the other sweeping the bay. Professionals, no wasted motion. When the closer one reached the autopsy table, I stepped out and pressed steel to his temple. Police. Drop it. He froze, breath sharp through his mask. The other man pivoted toward the sound. Lila shoved a tray off the counter, metal clattering across tile. It bought me a second. Enough to slam the first man against the table and pin him. The second bolted. By the time I dragged my cuffed prize into the light, his partner was gone. The man on the table was mid-30s, face blank like it had been scrubbed of personality. No wallet, no phone. But tucked in his coat pocket was a key fob stamped with a Crown logo. The Meridian again. You boys really like your clubs, I said. He said nothing. Didn't even twitch. Professionals don't. He knew he'd be processed as a John Doe until his lawyer, or handler, showed up. I turned to Lila. You see his face. Enough, she said. Her voice shook, but not from fear. From recognition. Who is he? Prep runner. Subcontracted. He signed transfer sheets the night Caleb died. I thought he was just a courier. I patted him down again, more deliberate. A folded slip of paper in his boot. Numbers. Locker combinations, 3 of them, written in a different hand than the ledger. Lila stared. Those are Transitus access keys. The underground archive. The morgue lights buzzed again, steady this time. Backup generators humming like a second heartbeat. My cuffs clicked solid. Then we're going underground, I said. I hauled the man to holding before sunrise. Left him in silence while the lab ran his prints. Danny called by mid-morning. Our John Doe. Nothing. Prints are smooth, burned out. He's either scrubbed by specialists or never existed in any system. Check dental, I said. Already in progress. Meanwhile, those locker codes? They match service corridors under Union Station. Maintenance tunnels that connect to old reliquary vaults. City records show they were leased by a non-profit shell. Guess who's behind it? Transitus, I said. Bingo. Knox's people have a warehouse under the city. Items never make it to surface auctions. They're traded like currency in the dark. I hung up and rubbed my eyes until the ledger's neat handwriting burned against the dark. Caleb had died for pages. My father's watch was just 1 line. How many other families had pieces of their dead stolen, sold, catalogued into inventory? I pulled the butcher paper bundle from my desk drawer, laid the pages out. 1 line near the bottom had been circled in pencil, not Caleb's hand. Lila's, maybe. Date: 6 months ago. Deceased: R. J. Sullivan. Effects: signet ring, World War II medal. Destination: TRI 115. Not my father, but another father. The same surname as Margaret Sullivan. A widow's name. My mind drew connections too fast. Caleb must have linked her case into the pattern. Maybe he thought tying grief to money made it more visible. The watch ticked in my memory, louder now. I called Lila. "We're going into those tunnels tonight. Bring whatever else you copied. If Knox runs a vault under Union Station, I want to see what he's hiding." Silence on the line. "Then, if we go in, we don't come out the same. You understand that?" "I've been different since 2009, I said. She didn't argue. "Meet me at the East Maintenance Gate at midnight. And don't bring backup. Too much noise." After the call, I sat in the dark of my office, ledger pages spread like a crime scene. My father's name on a line from 14 years ago. Caleb's blood still fresh in the margins. And Knox somewhere above ground, waiting for me to play the next move in a game I hadn't agreed to. But I was already playing. Because once you see your father's watch on a stranger's wrist, you can't unsee the seconds ticking down. The East Gate at Union Station was chained with 2 locks, both new. Midnight turned the place into a cathedral of echoes, trains long gone, tunnels humming with old power. Lila arrived in scrubs under her jacket, face pale from the cold, bag clutched like it contained a heartbeat. "You sure about this?" she asked. "No," I said, snapping the chain with bolt cutters borrowed from evidence. "That's why we're going." The service tunnel breathed stale air, dust layered like time. The codes from the courier's slip matched padlocks at junction doors, one after another. Whoever built this thought secrecy was stronger than steel. By the 4th door my gloves were damp, not from sweat but from the sense we weren't alone. Lila carried a flashlight wrapped in red filter. "Caleb said it was here," she whispered. "Vaults where they store what can't be sold above ground. Things with too much heat." We reached a steel hatch stenciled TRI 104. The numbers matched my father's line in the ledger. The lock turned on the 3rd code. Inside, the air was refrigerated, humming like the morgue. Racks of steel drawers stretched in rows, each labeled with tiny brass plates. Like filing cabinets for the dead's secrets. The first drawer I pulled slid smooth, revealing velvet trays of watches. Dozens of them. Omegas, Rolexes, Seikos, some battered, some pristine. Tags wired to each. Names, dates. My father's name was etched on one, the Seamaster lying flat, scarred crystal catching the red light. I froze. For a moment, it felt like he was there, hand warm on my shoulder. I lifted the watch. It still ticked, faint, stubborn. 40 years on, it kept time like it refused to stop. "You found it," Lila whispered. "No," I said. "I found proof." The next drawer held rings. Gold bands, jeweled clusters, school crests. The one after, medals, badges, dog tags. Whole lives reduced to inventory. I felt my stomach twist. "They catalog everything," Lila said, voice tight. "Families never know. Paperwork says, effects returned. They're siphoned here instead." Footsteps echoed behind us. I killed the light. A beam swept the aisle. 2 men, same blank faces as the courier, moving with purpose. "Run," I hissed. We cut through a side aisle, weaving between drawers. The men's lights crossed where we'd stood seconds before. One called into a radio. Their words weren't English, short syllables, coded. Lila yanked me toward a stairwell half hidden behind racks. "This way." We climbed into a chamber that smelled of ozone. A generator room, humming with current. On the wall, monitors glowed, showing camera feeds of every aisle below. Knox's eyes in the dark. "Jesus," I muttered. "They're watching everything." "Not everything," Lila said, pointing to a dead screen in the corner. "That sector's blind." We pushed deeper into the chamber. Against the far wall sat crates stamped with custom seals, broken and resealed. Inside, artifacts. Ivory figurines, pre-Columbian masks, coins older than the city. Not just grief inventory, smuggling. The dead were cover for trafficking. "Caleb was right," Lila whispered. "It's bigger than jewelry." Alarms wailed. Red strobes flared. Someone had tripped a silent sensor. Knox's collectors would be coming fast. I stuffed the Seamaster into my pocket, grabbed a handful of ledger tags from the watch drawer, and pulled Lila toward the blind sector. We squeezed through a rusted door into a crawlspace, just wide enough to drag ourselves along. Boots thundered in the chamber we'd left. Voices barked orders. The crawlspace opened into a disused platform, rail ties rotting. Old graffiti glowed faint under our flash. Tracks ended in concrete. Dead line. "We're boxed in," Lila said, panic breaking her calm. "No," I said, scanning. A service ladder led up to a grate. I climbed, shoved, metal screaming. The grate gave way into night air, an alley behind the station. We hauled ourselves out as sirens rose somewhere distant, too far to be for us yet. Lila collapsed against the wall, gasping. I checked my watch. Not my father's, the department issue. 2:14. We'd been inside over an hour. "You got it," she said between breaths. "You got his watch back." "I got evidence," I corrected. "Enough to burn Knox if the right eyes see it." "Will the right eyes want to?" That was the question. Back at the precinct, Danny's face lit when he saw the Seamaster. "Hell," he breathed. "That's the real thing." "Real enough," I said, laying it on his desk with the tags. "Get CSU to dust it. Chain of custody ironclad. And log those tags, they're linked to dozens of families. Victims." Danny turned serious. "Vale, this is heavy. If you're wrong, it sinks us. If you're right, it sinks people with deeper pockets than we've ever touched." "I'm not wrong." By dawn, word leaked anyway. A message slid under my office door in a plain envelope. Inside, a photo of my father's grave, fresh flowers laid neatly. The watch was missing from the headstone etching in the photo, scratched out with a blade. On the back, a note, "You can't keep time," from its owner. Signed A.K. Knox knew. Knox always knew. I sat with the Seamaster ticking in my palm, louder now, as if mocking. Seconds moving toward something I couldn't see yet. Lila sat across from me, face hollow. "They won't stop," she said. "Not until the ledger's ash." "Then we make sure the ledger lives longer than we do," I said. She nodded slowly. "Then we better find somewhere even Knox can't see." Outside, the city woke. I felt the weight of every stolen second in my pocket, each tick a reminder. This wasn't just about my father anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever buried a loved one thinking they were whole. And about the people who had been selling their ghosts back to the living. By noon the Seamaster was logged and sealed, the tags photographed, and the ledger pages copied twice. One set to the DA sealed evidence locker, one to a judge I trusted because he still brings his own coffee to arraignments and never takes meetings at restaurants that have hostesses. The original pages I split into thirds, slid them into 3 manila envelopes, and watched Danny mail them to 3 addresses that don't exist on paper. Insurance. If Knox lit a match, ash would spell his name. Lila slept an hour on the breakroom couch and woke up looking 10 years older. I signed her into protective custody without telling her where she'd actually be sleeping. The safest place in the city is sometimes the most obvious one. I borrowed a spare key to the evidence cage and set up a cot behind boxes of seized fireworks. The cameras there belonged to me. "You trust anyone?" she asked, staring up at the ceiling like it might fall. "A handful," I said. "And when I say their names out loud, I whisper." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered and said nothing. A man's voice filled the silence like perfume fills a room. "Detective Vale, we're circling toward melodrama. Let's land somewhere useful." "Knox," I said. "You found my cellar. You made a copy of my notebooks. You took a souvenir off a shelf that wasn't yours to touch. You forged my signature and fenced my father's life." He sighed, and for a second I heard the tired man under the polish. "We are not enemies." "You're right," I said. "Enemies have the decency to pick a side." He let that sit. "There is a solution that spares us both a great deal of grief." "Does it end with you in cuffs?" "Only if you put them on yourself." A soft chuckle. "Bring me the pages. Bring me Harmon. I'll replace what you took and fold your father's time back into your story. In exchange, you stop digging where the ground will collapse." "You killed Caleb." A pause. The tone softened. "Caleb killed Caleb. He went where policy forbids. He believed virtue was armor. It isn't. I would have kept him alive. Someone else preferred a message. You're collectors. Collectors are independent contractors. They collect what we're owed. And if we refuse to pay, you already have. The line clicked dead. Lila was watching me, eyes unreadable. He offered you your watch for me, she said. He offered me silence, I said. He doesn't understand what noise I prefer. We moved faster. I got a judge to sign the first warrant for the tunnels, narrowly tailored, no press, no chatter. I had to let the Bureau in enough to borrow their crowbar and keep them out enough they couldn't pry my hands off the case. The AUSA wanted a headline, the DA wanted a plea, the chief wanted a nap. The city wanted blood, but it didn't care whose. At 1600 hours the lab pinged with a second DNA result. The skin under Caleb's nail that wasn't Lila's matched a partial from a cold case out of Arlington, warehouse burglary, suspect unknown. The partial had been tagged with an alias, Remy. Not a face, not a file. A rumor. Remy was a ghost you paid in cash and met in noise. Remy's a woman, Lila said when she heard the name. I've seen her. Small frame, careful hands. Cashmere hoodies in summer. She signs with a half-moon nick on her index finger. She cut it on a broken vial years ago and refuses to let it heal right. Says it reminds her to keep gloves on. Caleb scratched her, I said. And she still finished the job. Lila swallowed, throat working. She's the one who told me not to be a page. I didn't understand what she meant until last night. I pushed a pad across the table. Draw me her face. Lila sketched a mouth that never fully smiled, eyes that could pass for kind if you were tired. I took a photo of the page, sent it to Danny. Run this against everything. Pull footage near Union Station from last night. Pay attention to hats and the way shoulders move. She won't look at cameras, so look for the way she looks away. We prepped for the tunnel hit at dusk. Small team, no chatter on open channels. The warrant let us hit TRI 104 and adjacent rooms, secure inventory, seize logs, bag the monitors, and follow any conduit labeled Transitus. The chief signed off because I said please in the tone I save for men who think I don't know where their kids go to school. Before we rolled, I stepped outside to breathe air that hadn't been stored cold. The city smelled like rain that couldn't make up its mind. A woman in a courier jacket bumped my shoulder and apologized with her eyes on the ground. She kept walking. She'd left something in my coat pocket. The weight told me paper. I waited a block, then I pulled it out. A single ledger page. Not mine. Not Lila's. Original. Date stamped last week. Deceased. Kaplan, Teresa. Effects, bridal set, pendant, a gold Patek with mother-of-pearl dial. Proxy, AK. Destination, private. Hold. At the bottom, a neat note in tiny block letters. You're not the only one who wants him. Remy, or someone speaking for her. The city wasn't whispering, it was passing notes in class. We went in at 21:03. The station coughed up its tunnels like a throat. The hatch at TRI 104 was ajar, which I hated. Either we were expected or we were late. Inside, the drawers still slept in rows, only now there were gaps like missing teeth. Someone had harvested in a hurry. We fanned out. Danny took monitors. CSU went low and slow, labeling trays. I went straight to the generator room to kill the eyes. A man waited in the doorway, hands visible, empty. He was my age with less sleep in his face. He wore jeans and a button-down like he wanted to be mistaken for a contractor. His index finger bore a crescent scar. Remy? I asked. He shook his head once. She sent me. Deliver a message. He glanced at the hall behind me, heard my team moving, calculated. She wants Knox too. But not your way. He slid a flash drive across the floor with his shoe. Accounting from a hardline server you didn't find. Transfers, payments, offshore. It ties his reliquary to people with titles. Why give it to me? Because if you go loud first, they'll crush you and write a footnote. She wants you to aim up. You could have emailed. Then you'd owe her. This way we owe each other equally." He turned like he might go. I stepped right, blocking. "Where is she?" "Close enough to see you, but not enough to be seen." He smiled without humor. "It's her profession." "Did she kill Caleb?" His pause wasn't performative. She stopped him from bringing a gun into the Meridian. He thought the ledger would be leverage, not a fuse. He lit it anyway. In the alley, she tried to keep him moving. Another team cut him off. Knox didn't order the kill. Someone above him did. Names. You'll get them if you live long enough to read the drive. He slipped past in a way that made my gun feel heavy and stupid. I let him go. Some people you chase and lose. Some you follow and win later. We bagged what we could. In TRI 115 we found boxes labeled with veterans' names, medals stacked like poker chips. In TRI 087, baby bracelets from 3 decades, their bells muted by foam. In a side room, a workbench with a microscope and a tiny press to buff numbers off casebacks. The city is a factory that makes grief look like commerce. Knox arrived while we were still inside. Not in person, of course. He called my cell. "Congratulations," he said, voice soft as a pillow someone smothers with. "You found trophies. But you haven't found a jury yet." "I found a ledger and a server," I said, bluffing one step past what I had. "I found the cabinets where you turned people into inventory." "You found the place where people who never cared for their dead are rescued from their own neglect," he said. "You found a problem that existed before me and will exist after you. You can hang me from it, but it won't break the beam." "You sound tired," I said. "I am," he admitted. "And I'm pragmatic. The watch is yours. Keep it. Keep the drawer it sat in, if it steadies you. But take Harmon out of the city. Tonight. Put her on a bus. If she stands in court, the ceiling falls. Not on me. On her." "You threatening a witness on a recorded line?" "I'm predicting weather," he said, almost gentle. "You think your sealed copies are safe? You think your judge drinks coffee because he can't afford wine? You do this public, you'll lose everything that matters that isn't made of steel." "I've already lost it," I said, and ended the call. Back upstairs, rain finally committed. I stood under the eave and listened to it drum. Lila joined me, face pale except for the hard set of her mouth. "He called you," she said. "He always does. What did he offer?" "Mercy," I said. "Which means he's scared." She exhaled. "Good." I handed her the flash drive. "This came from someone who wants Knox too. It might be a trap. It might be the gun we need. Either way, we verify offline. No networks, no email. I know a guy who still runs DOS for fun." She almost smiled. "You're old." "I keep old things," I said, and felt the Seamaster warm against my wrist like a small animal that trusts the hand that feeds it. We were almost to the cars when a sedan rolled slow past the station gate, windows wet with rain. A woman sat behind the wheel in a cashmere hoodie, profile turned just enough to be a rumor. She tapped her brakes twice, once for yes, once for no, and disappeared into the weather. "I didn't chase. Some ghosts you let see you breathe. Some you invite to the trial." The flash drive felt heavier than the Seamaster. I carried it in my coat like contraband, like it might hum through the lining if I held still too long. Danny cleared me a machine that hadn't touched the network since Bush was president. He set it on an old desk in a storage room with no cameras, just 2 busted lockers and a cracked tile floor. "Not even Wi-Fi," he said. "We're cavemen tonight." I slid the drive in. The screen stuttered, then bloomed with directories. Each folder named with a quarter and a year. 2012, Q3. 2019, Q1. 2023, Q2. I opened one at random. Spreadsheets filled the screen, numbers so clean they looked sterile. Transfers out of Transitus Reliquary. Payments routed through shells in Zurich, Panama, Dubai. But the buyers weren't smugglers or fencemen. They were universities, museums, private collections with trustees who play golf with senators. Knox wasn't selling grief to the gutter. He was laundering memory into legitimacy. Lila leaned over my shoulder, face pale in the monitor glow. Every piece has a paper trail. If this gets out, it's not just Knox. It's institutions. Politicians who sit on museum boards. Judges whose names are on donor walls. Danny whistled. This isn't evidence. This is a death warrant with your name on it. Maybe, I said. Or maybe it's a cure. If we drop it right. We printed 3 sets, stored them in envelopes, and locked the drive in an evidence safe even I didn't fully trust. I carried 1 packet myself, flat against my chest like armor. The Seamaster ticked under it. Seconds counting down to something none of us could name. By morning the press was circling. Rumors of funeral fraud rings leaked from somewhere. Maybe the DA's office, maybe the bureau trying to box me out. Reporters camped outside the precinct. One shoved a mic at me. Detective Vale, is it true a police investigation has uncovered theft of burial property across the city? I kept my voice flat. Ongoing case. No comment. They shouted after me, hungry for meat. The city loves scandal, but it loves blood more. Inside, the chief dragged me into his office, shut the blinds. Vale, what the hell are you playing at? I've got federal counsel breathing down my neck, and now I hear you raided storage under Union Station. Warrant signed, chain of custody sealed, I said. We've got enough to nail Knox and half his Rolodex. He jabbed a finger at me. You don't understand. Knox isn't some hustler. He consults for people with plaques on hospital wings. You push this wrong, the blowback buries us all. Then we push it right, I said. He sagged back. You sound like you still believe in right. I envy that. That night, Lila paced the evidence cage, restless. They'll erase me, she said. Either in court or in the ground. Knox warned you already. You're under my protection, I said. Her laugh was sharp. You're a detective with a badge and a cot. They've got reach that doesn't stop at your cage door. She wasn't wrong. I didn't tell her I'd started sleeping in my car with the packet taped under the seat, engine running light just in case I had to vanish between one breath and the next. At 2:07 my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I answered in silence. Detective Vale, Knox said, calm as ever. You've taken something that belongs to the city. You've mistaken possession for purpose. I'll give you one chance. Return the drive. Return Harmon. Walk away. I'll even let you keep your father's timepiece. A token for a man who tried. And if I don't, then we both lose. I've already lost, I said. There was a pause. His voice shifted, lower. Do you know why your father's watch mattered to us? My pulse hitched. Tell me. He wasn't just a name on a ledger. He was part of the ledger. Your father did work for us, long before you wore a badge. He collected, Vale. He inventoried. That Seamaster you hold, it's proof of loyalty, not inheritance. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why his coffin was sealed. Why St. Marlowe's let me sign your name. Because your father asked us to. He wanted his legacy carried, not buried. I ended the call before the words could root. But they rooted anyway, sinking like nails in wet wood. At dawn, a note slid under my office door. Same neat block letters as before. It read, Your father's name is in the files. You just haven't looked deep enough. Remy, or someone speaking for her again. I spread the printouts across my desk until my eyes blurred. Columns of names, codes, amounts. And there, 3 lines down from August 2009, Vale, Joseph. Proxy, AK. Destination, hold/internal. No effect listed. No watch. Just his name, boxed like an asset. Lila stood behind me. They catalogued him, she whispered. I couldn't breathe. My father wasn't just stolen. He was part of their system. Knox hadn't been bluffing. The city was no longer whispering. It was shouting in my ear, and every second on the Seamaster's dial was a countdown I couldn't stop. That night, rain smeared the windows of the precinct. I sat with the watch ticking, the ledger pages spread, and the flash drive locked 2 doors down. Somewhere out there, Knox was waiting, Remy was watching, and my father's ghost was demanding an answer. When the phone rang again at midnight, I knew it wouldn't be a warning. It would be an invitation. I picked it up. "Vale," I said. "Detective," Knox answered. "It's time we met face to face. Bring the watch. Bring the pages. And maybe we can both learn what your father left unfinished." The line went dead. The Seamaster ticked once, twice, steady as ever. And I realized the time left on it wasn't mine alone anymore. It belonged to everyone whose name was inked into that ledger, everyone who'd ever buried a loved one and lost them twice. And tomorrow, I'd have to decide whose time I was really keeping.